अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन। आज हमारे साथ Salman Yousuf, and he has 24 years of experience in marketing, and he's running a startup based in Dubai, and the startup's name is Toy Souk. Am I right?
Toy Souk, yes. Souk
Toy
is
Souk.
marketplace, yeah, in Arabic.
Okay. Toy Souk. What does it
Yeah.
mean, by the way?
So Souk means marketplace in Arabic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Toy Souk, and their vision is to build the largest toy store in the Middle East. Over to you, Salman.
All right. Thank you very much, Taha. I think it was a great introduction. I'm going to introduce myself a little further into my slides as well. I'm going to just give you a very good overview of who I am, what I do, what I've been doing so far, so that people can relate themselves, and also those who are going through a similar journey can have a better understanding of how to go about things. So I think I'm particularly very interested in this topic. From strategy to scale, I am a big proponent of building sustainable and profitable startups, because I'm one of those founders who would like to build a startup which is on a long-term basis and as a sustainable platform, instead of just building something, scaling very quick, exiting, and then everything either collapses in between, or just doesn't go through. So that's one thing. That's the reason when I was approached for this topic, I was very interested, and I said yes. If there's someone who can do this, I'd be the one to do it. So let's start off with the introduction. I'm going to start off with my introduction. So I've been a professional for last 24 years. I started off my journey with Procter and Gamble in the marketing department. I worked there for around 12 years in different capacities in different countries, but throughout in marketing. And towards the end of my career with Procter and Gamble, I moved into the general management role. So I became more senior, and I was heading the entire region, which was for Arabian Peninsula and the Middle East. So that was the region which I was leading, and then I moved out of PNG and started a few more. So I started off my venture, started off on my own business. Then I moved back to the job market, did a couple of stints in Pakistan, and now I'm working full time on my own startup. It's called Toy Souk. Like what Taha mentioned, that we're aiming to build the largest toys marketplace in the Middle East. So that's our aim, and that's what we're working towards. Again, it's going to be a sustainable startup, hopefully profitable from day one, if not day one, but very soon as we start it up. So that's the idea, and that's the reason why I'm here to talk about it. Moving on, I mean, you guys must have seen this stats that 80% of the startups fail due to poor strategy or scaling up too fast. So these are two very common stuff which happens, because generally startup founders are so enthusiastic about their startups, and generally what happens is when you are developing a concept or an idea, you fall in love with that idea more than anybody else, and you just sometimes don't see beyond the idea. So that's one reason why most of the startups fail at the early stages. The other thing which happens, which is the other spectrum of things, is they try and scale up extremely fast. So you started off something, you got a couple of clients, and then you're like, oh my god, now this seems to be working. I'm going to get some funding, and I'm going to start up, and I'm going to scale it up to the next level and take things forward accordingly. Now, in the middle, what happens is that since it's not properly guided, or it's not properly thoroughly processed, startups generally fail because of that. So that's a very major issue why majority of the startups fail. So it's generally either of these two reasons why most of the startups fail. So the good news is today I'm going to share with you guys a framework. It's going to be a framework which is step by step taking you through what needs to be done at the strategy level, and how to take it forward, and when to recognize it's the right time to scale it up. Because it's my passion area, and this is something which I really truly believe in. Hence, I would really like to share it with the people around here. So let's dig deep into the framework as we go about it. So starting off with the strategy first, okay? I call it the idle model. It's called identifying the gaps, defining your unique value proposition, and lean and agile approach. So it's a very important model because in this you have to first spot the opportunity that you have or the gap that you have identified in the market. So for example, I'm going to give you my example because that's something which is close to my heart and something which I've done it myself. So when I started off the idea, um, I had to do a lot of research, and I did a lot of research in terms of Middle East market, in terms of toys market. I identified that okay, toys is a very very big market in the Middle East, especially if since we are starting off in the UAE. I'm going to talk about UAE numbers first. So in UAE, for example, it has the highest per capita consumption of toys in the world. That's one very big data point that's there. Then you need to see, okay, it's a very big market, but then how are the other competition playing? What are they doing? What's going on over there? So I did a lot of research over there as well. What I found out that there's not a single toys dedicated marketplace available in the UAE. So again, that is something which is a big data point which helps us identify that the opportunity is there. Seems like it's a white space, but it's not really a white space because yes, there's no dedicated toys marketplace there, but there are other fragmented players which are very very big players and serious players, like there's Amazon, there's Noon, there's First Cry, there's Mom's World. So there are still the players are there. Obviously, they're playing in their own areas, but they're still there. So what would be that unique value proposition that we're going to create? So that brings us to the second point. So once you've done your identification of the gap, or you've done what needs to be done, then you need to get into what unique value proposition you're going to bring to the table. How are you going to differentiate versus what's already available in the market and what's already people are used to? Because it also takes a toll for people to move from something which is already there, they're used to of using that proposition, and you need to then move to a new platform. There needs to be a good enough reason for you to happen for it to happen. So our unique proposition, for example, because I'm just taking that example so that everybody understands the concept. So our unique proposition is that we are the first toys only marketplace. We're a marketplace. We're not just a single seller, single vendor platform. So we're a marketplace, which means we will have ideally a lot more variety versus what's available in the market. Additionally, we are also open to bringing toys from, for example, other countries as well, like China, etc. So that brings our product proposition viable. At the same time, since it's a marketplace and since it's multi-vendor, we can do the comparison of pricing of a same product. We can do we will all be able to understand on the same platform what's the pricing, what's the promotion, where are they getting the best product with the best value. uh, so the consumer has the ability to do that. Plus the unique value proposition additionally which we're bringing to the table is the AI feature to the website or the platform. So in our platform, we like consumers to search on the use case basis. So for example, what we don't want consumers to say is I want Lego, for example, or I want Barbie. I don't want them to say that. I want them to say that we're a I want consumers to say that I have a 6-year-old daughter. Please suggest a toy for me. Or my son is going to a birthday party. My budget is between 100 dirhams to 150 dirhams. Please suggest a toy for him, for the friend. So the AI is this, since the platform is AI enabled, it would be able to suggest a very very strong proposition, and it would also recommend why is it suggesting this toy. Because generally what happens is you need to understand that in this market you need to give the relevant toys to the kids, as well as it needs to be affordable as well. So that needs to be taken care of when going ahead with this. So the last point of this model is lean and agile approach. Now that's again something which is close to my heart, because what more often than not, generally startups who get early funding, so for example angel investment, you started off with a concept. It was liked by few people, or friends and family and all of that, and you got an angel investment. And then people are like, okay, great, yes, we've got the funding. Now we're going to put a huge team. We're going to put the we're going to put up huge fixed costs, and we're going to run with it, right? That's not a very prudent approach to the startup world, because what happens is, if you do it this way, you already have a very strong and heavy fixed costs without even starting off with the revenue. Now that really is a recipe for a disaster, because you need to first understand how the value proposition is for your business, and then put up the appropriate team. I'm not saying that you just don't have a team. I'm saying you have a team, but have, so for example, I mean, if me being a very conservative in this approach, I would say if you need 10 people, probably hire 5 or 6 first, see how it goes, work, all of you guys create a culture that you all work a little inch more or a little bit more, uh, so as to fulfill the requirement of those 10 people. You should personally also get involved into the work, and do the works yourself, uh, and then scale it up as and when needed. So once you know that the proposition is working, the revenues are coming, you understand what the revenue models are, and we're going to come to that, to the revenue model in a bit, into our next slide when we get there. Once you get to a certain position, that's when you need to understand that, okay, now it's time to scale up, or now it's time to at least build the teams, and then start it off with the right approach. So in our case also, I mean, what you see today as a platform, it's very different versus what it was at the MVP stage. For example, we had a very basic platform. We had a basic approach. I mean, for the longest time, I was the solopreneur, so solo everything. I was doing everything myself. I had generally freelancers initially. Now, obviously, we have some team, and we have a full-fledged approach to the proposition as we're launching into the proposition. But when we started off, it was not the case. So we started off very lean, and that's where the value proposition came into the play. So I hope this model, or this framework, seems interesting and seems to make sense. Um, Moving on to the next part, which is again a very very important part, which is making sure to build the platform, or your startup, a profitable startup. Now, obviously, there is a bit of an intention that comes into the play. So, first things first, you need to have the right intention for the startup. I don't want to name the startups, but the culture that we have recently seen in the past has not been very prudent, and people have not had a good intention to begin with, getting into the startup world. And that's why, they, although despite having a lot of funding and a lot of initial success, those startups failed, because the intention was not there. The overall idea was to make money and just get out of it. So I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that you need to have the right intention. Then at the same time, you need to have the right revenue model, and you need to have the clarity of what those revenue models are going to be. Um, which means that you need to first make sure that you understand your CAC. CAC is the cost of acquisition. So if it's a B2C business, you need to understand what is your cost of acquisition, and then what are your lifetime value. So these are two very important metrics that you need to understand first, because if your CAC is so high that even with your LTV, you're not able to make or square the books, then you need to really think your model again. Because, like I also said in the beginning, more often than not, we generally get, we fall in love with our concept more than anybody else, and we try and push the boundaries to make the concept work, whereas generally it is not helping, or it's not working out. So first things first, as you're beginning your startup journey, I think it doesn't take any funds to at least do your paperwork first. So build your profitability model first on the paper or on the computer, for example, uh, and then see how it's going to do. And then take things forward. So first things first, you need to make sure that you have a CAC versus LTV model sorted out. Then once you have an idea of how big of a difference or the gap you have in between these two, you need to generally also make sure that you have cost efficiency. And this links back to the first point where we said agile and lean structure. uh, because the lower the costs that you have, the lower burn rate you would have as your early startup, and you would be more prone to getting funding, and you'd be more prone to getting to your profitability journey early on. So that's something which is extremely important. So you need to make sure that you built in from day one. Your concept needs to be that I'm going to make sure that we have a very lean structure. And it's not only the structure that needs to be lean, it needs to be everything that you do needs to drive in efficiency. So something which can be done in the less, try and do it in that, rather than being exuberant or extravagant, despite getting funding. I mean, see, if you got a funding, that's an amazing thing, right? But that doesn't mean that you start spending money left, right, center without understanding what's going on and how is it going to pan out. Because I've seen more often than not that a lot of startups generally fail because of spending too much on I mean, extravagant things. So they buy great offices, they buy great cars, they incentivize their people extremely high. I mean, I'm not against all of these things. I mean, yes, you should do it at a time when it's appropriate, and I'm a big proponent of incentivizing the teams, and we're going to come to the teams in a bit, but not at the cost of the business getting into losses. So so we need to make sure that you have a very strong cost efficiency model in place. Another thing which also drives cost efficiency is strategic partnerships. So so whatever your startup proposition is, you need to see how you can have strategic partnerships that will bring the costs down. So for example, if you have logistics uh, involved in your startup, then you need to ensure that you have a logistics partner who can really work with you like a partner and give you rates that are preferential rates, because that really helps in the early parts of the startup, because that will give you a competitive advantage versus what's available in the market, and will also make sure that you become a sustainable startup rather than just someone who's burning cash. Last thing which is part of the profitability model is the customer retention and acquisition. So what more, I mean, this is no secret that people who are the repeat customers are much more valuable than one-time buyers, because um, all the marketing efforts that we do, the consumer acquisition efforts that we do, generally charge more to get those one-time buyers. But at the same but if those buyers have become repeat purchasers, that's where you make a lot of money, because you're not spending that dollar to acquire those consumers. Rather, those are loyal consumers. They're just coming back again onto your platform or whatever the startup is, um, and they're coming by default, so you don't have to pay money to get them on your platform. And obviously, those loyal customers are also going to bring some more loyal customers through word of mouth and through different ways. So so that's something which is very, very important. You need to develop programs. So if it's a B2C, you need to develop programs which entails loyalty, subscription, maybe community building strategies. So those are the things that are going to help you drive more customer acquisition and build them on a long term basis, because that's the actual asset that you have for your company. And I mean, at the time of if you get to the Series A or Series B investment, the venture capitalists also look at how many loyal customer base or consumer base that you have, and that's something which is extremely important and given a lot of weightage while doing the company valuation as well. So it's not only helping you in terms of making sure that your value proposition stays intact, your profitability stays intact, but also it helps you in driving your company valuation. So I think that's one thing which is not to be missed out while considering the model. Next, we move to the um, scale sustainability model. Again, this is, I think this is the most important thing, because this is where a lot of people fail to recognize what and when to scale up. Uh, Now, generally, what happens is, like I also briefly touched upon in the beginning, that people who started up, they are generally in love with their concept. If they get funding uh, through in the initial parts, what they generally do is they just go and scale up very very fast. Now that's again a recipe for a disaster, because you have not tested your concept properly. I mean, if you have like a few customers and you have initial traction, that doesn't mean it's a sustainable growth, or or it's something which is working well. This needs to be thoroughly tested before you go into the scaling up part. So, what are the signs that you're ready for scale up? So, few signs would be: a, you have consistent demand of your product, right? So consistently, month on month, you should at least try, in my humble opinion, you should at least try your model for the next 5 to 6 months, if not more, and see how is it going. Are you getting consistent demand of your product? That's number one. Number two is you should have very strong unit economics. So if you don't know your unit economics, if you don't measure them, then again, that's a recipe for a disaster. You need to make sure that your unit economics are making sense, they're in the right place, and they're I mean, month on month, they're delivering on the same unit economics, or whatever the difference or the ups and downs are. Those are taken into account and into consideration uh, into your revenue model. Lastly, is that the third point is the operational readiness, because all these three things are extremely important, or are the signs that you're ready for scale up. If you have any of these three things not ready, that means you're not ready for a scale up yet. You need to fix those things, or you need to get to a level where those things are making sense, and then you do the scaling up. Now, talking about operational readiness, because I just touched upon it and not talked about it in a bit detail. So you need to make sure that your, I don't know, last mile delivery partners are in place. You're able to deliver your product to the customer on time, in full, uh, and consistently, because it's not a one time game. It's going to be it's something which you need to build on a consistent basis, and it needs to stay that way for some time. And hence, this is the reason why what generally happens is, now I'm going to give you a pitfall of each of these three pillars, which gives you the sign of uh, when to scale. Which So if these three pillars are not present, what will happen, right? And if you scale it up earlier than what is needed, then you're just you're heading for a disaster, or you're heading for a failure, which can be avoided. So, for example, if you don't have a consistent demand, you have a demand. So, for example, you launch something, you have an extremely high demand in the first month, so you got, like, I don't know, 1,000 orders in the first month, and because something which was extremely unique, and probably you just filled the market and that's it. uh, Next month you just didn't get any order, or you just got very few orders, like 4 or 5 of them. And then the month after, you still were in the similar shape, like you got very very low orders. So how are you going to measure the success? So, and if you scale up on the basis of your first month order, where the market was completely empty, and you just kind of filled the pipeline, it's going to be not right in terms of developing your sustainable startup. So you need to make sure that there is a consistent demand, and you measure it over a period of some months, at least 6 months, I would say, if not more. But generally, people say between 6 to 12 months is what is good to read before getting into the scaling up. But I think 6 months is enough to give you a little bit of a trend, um, and also make sure that, obviously, I mean, I'm giving these are just anecdotes, so make sure that you understand your business model correctly, and if there is any seasonality impact on your business, you need to take it into account, the seasonal impact as well, and then decide how long you want to try it out, or look at the signs for scaling up. So consistent demand is extremely important, and you measure it at least for 6 months to be able to gauge what really your demand is in the market by the consumers. And then we've talked about the strong unit economics again, because sometimes what happens is um, startup founders generally get into this fallacy of okay, I'm starting it up, the unit economics doesn't make sense right now, but as I scale up, like once I'm going to get the funding, I'm going to have the volumes, that's when the unit economics will start making sense. Generally, more often than not, what I've seen is this doesn't happen, uh, because it's a unit economics. So if on a per unit basis your product is not viable, even if you scale it up and you get the volume, there'll be only a smaller percentage of unit value which is going to get optimized. So unless you radically change something, the unit economics by and large would remain the same. Hence, it's very important to make sure you fix your unit economics earlier on in the on the journey before you actually scale it up. So whenever you see unit economics being under pressure or something which is kind of not there, you need to start peeling the onion and get into the details of what's working, what's not working, what are the things that can be optimized earlier on, even before scaling up, and then see how it's going to go. And then obviously, please do a bit of a reverse calculation that if you scale up, what percentage of optimization is going to come into play, and then is it going to still make sense or not. So that needs to be done. And again, these are all things which doesn't require um, funding or any elaborate team to do this. It requires just you as a founder and maybe your accounting person, a finance person to work it out with you. Lastly, on the operational readiness, more often than not, if the first two things are still working out well, so for example, you have very good demand, you've got decent unit economics, but if you're operationally not ready, you are again you're falling for a disaster, because that's an even worse disaster than anything else. Because what will happen in this case is that you're going to open doors for your competition, because people are going to learn from you. People are going to see that okay, you started off something which is amazing, it is driving traction, which means it's driving your demand. Unit economics seems pretty good, but you're unable to fulfill the orders, or you're unable to operationally drive the momentum. Hence, they're going to come in and take over the market. And more often than not, we've seen in the past a lot of startups have failed, and a lot of startups have come taking this as an opportunity and gone to the moon, right? We've got many examples of such operational readiness issues or propositions that have built or failed the startups, depending on which side of the place you are. So again, when to scale up, I've talked about it in depth, that consistent demand, unit economics, operational readiness. You need to make sure that these things are extremely in place, and then you start it out. Now, generally, what challenges you face in scaling up is logistics, supplier management, maintaining quality. These are the things that you generally come across as challenges when you're scaling up, because yes, in a very small lab environment, you're able to control your quality, you're still able to manage your logistics and supplier, etc. But as you scale up and you have more orders, and because generally it's a matter of how you do the marketing, right? So you start off with small marketing efforts which gets you small results. You test this out in this safe environment, and then you do your calculation of how can I scale it up and how much volume can I take. So you need to plan it out in that way, and you need to have a build up month on month to be able to make sure that you're working on your back logistics first, or back operations first, and then you're building up your volumes accordingly. So you need to be prepared for the volumes first and then build for the demand. And that's how you should plan it out, because if you do it the reverse way, you will have very dissatisfied customers, and there are chances more often than not that you will give a chance to a new entrant who's going to take away your market share, which you definitely don't want to do. So you have tackled all those challenges, in scaling up. So you automate your team. This is the time where you invest into your back office first, right? So you built in the right team, you built in the right technology, you make sure that you have operations which is ready now for the scale up. That's where your investment should go in, right? This is the time to go and invest into the real fundamentals of the business, and that's going to help you drive the business fundamentally for the longest time. Okay. Now, the last point in the scaling up sustainably is, how do you approach the growth model, right? So are you going to bootstrap versus you raise capital? Uh, what's the right balance? Now, I mean, this is something which is again completely dependent on the founder and their capacity to bootstrap. Um, my record generally is, if your intention is in the right place, if you have a good proposition, then at least to the first 6 months or the post revenue model, do the bootstrapping, right? That's my recommendation. I mean, everybody has their own ideas and everybody has their own recommendations, but this is what I recommend, that if you really believe in your idea, because this is going to give you a little bit of a pain as well, because it's going to take away your money. So it's going to give you a lot of pain in terms of that, and also it's going to keep you in the right place, because you're not going to spend extravagant on things which are not needed, because it's your money. And if you truly believe in your idea, you're going to spend your money. And that gets and this and the reason why I say this is because after 6 or 8 months, or whenever you're ready for scaling up, you will have a much stronger proposition going up to the VCs, or the investors, early seed investors or early stage investors, because that's where they will see that this guy has been bootstrapping, he's been putting his own money, he or she has been doing he's qualified the concept, and now it's all about scaling up and building the scale and then scaling up. So it becomes pretty easy to raise capital. See, we've seen in the startup world, in the last decade or so, we have seen the ups and downs of the startup world, where initially the funding was extremely easy. Anybody who said startup got a funding down their throat, but later on people realized that this is not working out. It's not as glory as it seems, but and that's the reason why a lot of startups also failed. Uh, so now things have become a little challenging in terms of getting funding for your startup. But I think the best way, this is my approach again, it's my take on this. I can be wrong, not wrong, but I can have a different perspective. But this is what my perspective is, that you should go and bootstrap first, get to a certain level, and then generally raising capital at that stage becomes much easier, and you have a data to prove. And people generally don't deny data. If you have a very solid, strong, real data which you can show to people, getting capital at that stage becomes a breeze. So generally is not very difficult. And then the last part of this is going to be your balance of growth and profitability, because that's something which you need to really balance it out. uh, I mean, I again don't want to name the startups, but there are certain startups in Pakistan that started off, they were only concentrated on growing and not on profitability. And today those startups don't exist anymore. So that's a very strong balance that you need to drive, to be able to make sure that your business is sustainably growing, and also is profitable. It's not just those numbers, fancy numbers that you want to show to VCs and people around you, but you're actually making money. Because at the end of the day, why do we do business? We do business to make money, right? And this concept of startups and not making money doesn't go very well now. I mean, it was something which, if you were doing this in like 6 7 years ago, when the startup culture was a little hot and new, you could have still sold it, but not anymore, I would say. All right. So finally, I'm getting towards the end of my presentation, or the things that I have shared so far. So I have three big lessons to impart. First, obviously, is the strategy before execution, and we've talked about it uh, in detail. So my point would be, don't rush. First, do your strategy working, do the market fit, understand how it's going on, and then scale it out, right? Second point is profitability, which means vanity metrics. Do your revenue sustainability, do your calculations, make sure that you have, revenue streams that are coming in, which is higher than your, expenses. There are more GMV, create ideas of getting more GMVs, and then move forward with scaling up things. Lastly, I think again equally important and extremely actually very important is the culture and the team that you build. Because again, startup is all about the team that you are able to build. I think one of the things that you will see if you go for funding, one of the things that the VCs and the big investors see is how sustainably you can build the teams and how good people that you can put in place for your business, and that's extremely important. With this, I will hand over to Taha. If he or anybody in the audience have any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
थैंक यू सो मच सलमान, इट वाज अ रियली गुड सेशन। हमने काफ़ी चीज़ों की बात की आपने, जिसमें स्ट्रेटजी सबसे पहले डिफाइन करना है, देन प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी की तरफ जाना सबसे पहले, इंस्टेड के सिर्फ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स रेज करें हो या रेवेन्यू के पे ऊपर फोकस करें। मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टार्टअप्स डू एक्चुअली डू दिस, दैट दे जस्ट प्ले विद द नंबर्स कि बस आपने नंबर्स की गेम ऊपर करनी है, एंड प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी वाले फैक्टर को नहीं ऐड इन करते लोग। आई डू हैव वन क्वेश्चन विच इज़ आई थिंक वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, स्पेशली इन द अर्ली स्टेजेस ऑफ स्टार्टअप, राइट? टीम बिल्डिंग का जो एलिमेंट होता है, दैट इज एक्सट्रीमली क्रूशियल एंड इम्पोर्टेंट। सो हाउ डू यू अप्रोच द हायरिंग प्रोसेस, द टीम बिल्डिंग प्रोसेस, और एक वो हाई परफॉर्मिंग हाई फंक्शनल टीम मेंटेन करना, उसके challenges क्या होते हैं?
I think it's a very good question, and I think that's something which I should have touched upon. I think I kind of missed out, but thanks for bringing it up. I would say this is extremely important. It's as important as building your concept I mean, testing your concept. Because if you're not able to build the right team in the beginning, you will not be able to bring your dream to the reality. Now, for us to be able to do that, obviously, make sure that you're doing the right hiring. You have the right people with the right mindset. See, startup पे काम करना हर आदमी के बस की बात नहीं होती है, right? It's a challenge because startup world is a very VUCA world. It's an ambiguous world where things change very fast. Things are very ambiguous, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. So कुछ लोग होते हैं जो कि बहुत स्ट्रक्चर्ड होते हैं और वो बहुत स्ट्रक्चर्ड जगह पे ही काम कर सकते हैं, तो they should work in a stable company. Some people like and get a kick in things which are ambiguous or which are fast paced. वो लोग आपको चाहिए होते in the startup world who can run with you, who can work with you on a long term basis, and who can work with you on a startup in a startup culture. Because again, I'm running a startup. I know that अगर आप किसी startup दुनिया में चले जाते हैं तो there is no day and there is no night. You're working almost 24 hours. But for founders, I'm going to give a message that for founders they need to make sure that they hire accordingly. So they hire with the people who have this kind of a DNA, but at the same time they need to make sure that they pay them accordingly as well. So there needs to be rewarded accordingly, which means they need to get some equity stakes as well, so that it continues and you build a team on a long term basis. It's not just a one time thing कि आपने किसी को hire किया, 4 महीने काम कराया, and then you got rid of it. Because वो फिर जो 4 महीने काम करने वाला बंदा होगा वो काम भी उस तरह से कर रहा होगा कि वो 4 महीने के लिहाज से काम कर रहा होगा. You want someone who can stay with you for at least 4 to 5 years to make sure that he sinks and swims through the waves. So that's extremely important. And thanks for bringing this question up, because this is an extremely important question. I touched upon it, but I didn't talk about it in detail. So thank you for bringing this question up.
नो वरीज सलमान। अच्छा, इसी से रिलेटेड मेरे एक और क्वेश्चन है, जो स्पेशली इन द स्टार्टिंग, राइट, फॉर अ स्टार्टअप और फॉर अ फाउंडर इट इज़ वेरी हार्ड टू आइडेंटिफाई कि क्या चीज़ें उसने टीम हायर करके करनी है, क्या चीज़ें एज अ फाउंडर उसको खुद करनी चाहिए। बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली स्पीकिंग इट्स अ न्यू स्टार्टअप, आप एक नई चीज़ स्टार्ट कर रहे हो, यू आर नॉट जनरेटिंग एनफ रेवेन्यू, यू डोंट हैव एनफ रिसोर्सेज कि आप टीम्स भी हायर करो और आप पूरे के पूरा जो है फंक्शंस अपने आउटसोर्स कर दो किसी को, या आप जो है टीम हायर करके उनको असाइन कर दें, यू जस्ट फोकस ऑन द रेस्ट ऑफ द बिजनेस. सो what would be the ideal way for a founder to manage both of the things, uh, in terms of sustainability और product development की साइड भी देखनी होती है, और फिर साइड बाय साइड आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स भी रेज करनी है, आपने क्लाइंटेल भी लेके आनी है, आपने बिजनेस डेवलपमेंट करनी है. सो एक सोल एज अ फाउंडर यू हैव टू डू each and everything, including the finances and the other stuff as well. So what would be the ideal thing you would suggest to the startups के जो आपका core focus area है, either you focus on that and then आप हायरिंग उसके अकॉर्डिंगली करो कि बाकी लोग बाकी चीजों पे काम करें, या what would be that ideal mixture of it?
ऐसे भी एक सेंटेंस बोलूंगा और आपको अंदाजा हो जाएगा कि क्या आंसर है.
Hmm.
तो देखिए, स्टार्टअप फाउंडर बनना ना आसान काम नहीं है. यू हैव टू डू इट ऑल योर
Hmm.
सेल्फ, राइट? सो so obviously, this is just one statement, but it's a reality as well. So once you're a startup founder, you need to actually start doing all of these things, start doing things yourself. आपको
Hmm.
देखना पड़ेगा कि कहाँ पे it becomes a limitation. So when it
Hmm.
becomes something, for example, if you're a startup founder and you have a marketing or a business background, you don't have any technical background, then obviously you need to hire someone who has a very strong technical background. Either ideally have a co-founder, make that person
Hmm.
as a co-founder, who can work with you on developing a tech support, for example. ठीक है?
Hmm.
तो अब आप दो लोग हो गए. Someone is handling the business part of it and the other person
Hmm.
is handling the tech part of it, and then you guys are still kind of bootstrapping, doing things yourself. आपको एक जब लेवल लगे ना कि यहाँ पे आके अब हमें जो है वो कॉन्सेप्ट टेस्ट हो गया, ठीक है?
Hmm.
देखिए, कॉन्सेप्ट टेस्ट करने के लिए ना आपको कोई बहुत ज़्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट की भी ज़रूरत नहीं है और बहुत ज़्यादा कोई रिसोर्सेज की भी ज़रूरत नहीं है. यू नीड टू मेक श्योर कि आप कॉन्सेप्ट अपना प्रॉपरली टेस्ट कर लें पहले, बिफोर यू गो इनटू स्केलिंग अप और बिफोर यू गोइंग इनटू हायरिंग पीपल. बिकॉज देखिए, एट द एंड ऑफ द डे, एटलीस्ट आई एम वेरी केयरफुल विद हायरिंग पीपल, राइट? एक तो आपको हायर करने में टाइम लगता है, अच्छे बंदे लेने होते हैं एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, but at the same time, people's lives are also dependent on you. So you need to be extremely careful about it. What you don't want to do is कि आपने किसी को हायर किया, 3 महीने बाद आपको पता चला कि यार ये तो इस जॉब की जरूरत ही नहीं थी. So you will have to let that person go, and just imagine what happened to that person. You need to be very careful about those things as
Hmm.
well. आप बिल्कुल, you can't be irresponsible about it. So make sure that you hire only when it becomes almost next to impossible for you to take it forward as a founders or the group of founders. If you guys cannot balance your responsibilities and not manage that, that's when you start hiring people, right? In the early stages of startup. दूसरी बात मैं एक और ये करूँगा कि आज के वर्ल्ड में आई थिंक testing out your concept has become the easiest thing, because chat gpt का ज़माना है, AI का ज़माना है. You can test all your concepts through GPT and AI. Obviously it doesn't give you the in market answers, but it gives you a lot of world research. It gives you research across the world, and it's very fast also. So you don't have to go anywhere and do anything. आप जब आपने concept एक develop किया है, आप at least अपना paper पे plans develop कर लें, and then you also ask AI platforms. They can help you out with that, and then you do the real tests in the market and then scale it up. I hope that
Thank you.
answers it.
Thank you so much, Salman. Thank you so much. It was a
Not
really
at all.
good and insightful session. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much
Not
for
at all.
such an insightful session. Inshallah, we'll keep doing this more
Sure.
often. And if you guys have any questions, just directly comment down below and we'll reach out to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.